If you touch that call button, I'll leave before anyone comes. Clara froze, her finger hovering inches from the emergency alert. Lightning flashed outside the window, illuminating the stranger's face. Gaunt, bruised, but with eyes sharp as surgical steel. Blood was seeping through his makeshift bandages, staining the pristine sheets of room 305. Hospital protocol requires me to report all gunshot wounds, she said evenly, though her heart hammered against her ribs. It wasn't a gunshot. His voice was cultured despite his ragged appearance. And we both know you've already broken protocol by bringing me here instead of the ER. She withdrew her hand slowly. He was right. The moment she'd found him collapsed in the service entrance, soaked from the storm, clutching his side where a deep laceration tore through his flesh. She'd made a choice. No paperwork, no questions, just basic humanity. The night shift at Mercy General was already a skeleton crew, stretched thinner by the torrential downpour that had flooded the east wing. Water dripped steadily from a crack in the ceiling into a plastic bin beside the bed, each drop marking the seconds of her professional misconduct. "You have 20 minutes, Clara said, pulling on fresh gloves. "That's how long before the night supervisor makes rounds. I'll clean and dress your wound, give you antibiotics, but then you need to disappear." Thunder rumbled as she carefully peeled away the blood-soaked fabric from his side. The man didn't flinch, though the pain must have been excruciating. Instead, his gaze followed her every movement with unnerving intensity. "Why are you helping me?" he asked. "Because it's my job." "Your job requires documentation, insurance forms, ID." He caught her wrist gently when she reached for the antiseptic. "I have nothing." Clara met his eyes. 3 years on the night shift had taught her to read people quickly. This man was dangerous, but not to her. Everyone has something. Right now, you have a laceration that needs stitches. Outside in the corridor, a crash cart rattled past. Clara tensed, listening for footsteps to slow near room 305, but they continued down the hall. When she looked back, the man had closed his eyes, exhaustion briefly claiming his vigilance. Without the intensity of his stare, Clara noticed other details. His hands were calloused, but clean, nails trimmed. His breathing was controlled despite the pain. The filthy coat beside the bed was designer under the mud. None of it made sense. "This will hurt," she warned, pressing an antiseptic-soaked gauze to the wound. He didn't make a sound, but his jaw clenched, a fine sheen of sweat breaking across his forehead. Clara worked quickly, her fingers steady from years of practice. 11 stitches, neat, even. They would barely scar if he didn't tear them open again. "You've done this before," he observed as she taped a clean dressing over her handiwork. "2 tours as a combat nurse before this place. You learned to work fast." "Afghanistan?" She nodded, surprised by his perception. "I thought so." His voice softened. There's a look in the eyes. People who've seen too much, too young. Clara busied herself with cleaning up the bloody gauze, uncomfortable with how easily he'd read her. Most patients saw the uniform, the professional smile, nothing more. This man saw beneath. "The antibiotics should kick in soon," she said, changing the subject. "Fever might spike first. If the wound starts throbbing or shows red streaks, I know the signs of infection." "Of course you do," she almost smiled. "Just another day for you getting stabbed and stitched up by strangers?" The corner of his mouth quirked up, transforming his face. For a moment he looked younger, almost handsome beneath the bruising. "First time it's been such pleasant company." Clara rolled her eyes but felt an unexpected warmth spread through her chest. It had been a long time since she'd allowed herself to feel anything for a patient. Since Afghanistan. Since losing. No. She shut the thought down hard. She handed him 2 pills and a cup of water. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, his skin surprisingly warm against hers. A jolt of awareness passed between them, startling in its immediacy. "You treat me like I matter," he said quietly. an odd vulnerability creeping into his voice. Clara paused, surprised by the simple observation and by how much his words affected her. "Everyone matters," she said automatically, but the platitude rang hollow. The truth was more complicated. Not everyone believes that. His dark eyes held hers, searching. "Most would have left me where they found me." She looked away first, disconcerted by her own reaction to this stranger. "Take those pills. Rest while you can. I'll come back before my rounds end to check on you." At the door, Clara hesitated, looking back at the mysterious patient. The storm had subsided, leaving only the steady drip of rainwater into the plastic bin. In the dim light, his profile was strong, watchful. His gaze traced her movements with an intensity that made her skin tingle. Something unspoken charged the air between them, a connection she couldn't explain and knew better than to explore. Chemistry, recognition, danger. As Clara finally turned to leave, her eyes caught on something peeking from beneath his sleeve, a small, intricate tattoo partially visible on his forearm. Not crude prison ink or a drunken mistake, but a precisely rendered crest with elegant scrollwork. She recognized it immediately from the hospital's donor wall, the emblem of the Vasconcelos Empire. Her pulse quickened, but she said nothing as she closed the door behind her, leaving the mysterious man alone in room 305 with the steady drip of rainwater marking time until her return. Clara slipped through the hidden passage connecting the hospital's main building to the abandoned pediatric annex. The old wing had been closed for renovations for nearly a year, a convenient excuse for budget cuts, but Clara had repurposed the forgotten space. 20 small cots lined the walls, occupied by sleeping children, runaways, undocumented, forgotten by a system designed to overlook them. Clara's unofficial shelter operated on donated supplies and whispered referrals from social workers who'd exhausted official channels. "Miss Clara!" A small hand tugged at her scrubs. Gabriel, 8 years old and mute since witnessing his mother's murder, smiled up at her. His expressive eyes communicated what his voice couldn't. "Hey, buddy." Clara knelt to his level. "Shouldn't you be asleep?" Gabriel shook his head vigorously, reaching into his pocket. He pressed something cool and metallic into her palm, a slender bracelet with an engraved caduceus symbol. "Where did you find this?" Clara turned the silver bangle over, recognizing it immediately. This belonged to Nina Santos, night nurse, whistleblower, missing for 3 months. The official story: she'd quit without notice, moved back to the Philippines. But she'd left her locker full, her apartment untouched. Gabriel pointed to the air vent near his cot, then mimed finding the bracelet inside. Clara examined the bracelet more closely. The clasp was unusual, too complex for simple jewelry. She pressed the tiny indentation near the caduceus symbol, and the bracelet split open, revealing a hidden micro SD card. "Oh, Nina," she whispered. "What did you find?" "You're supposed to be resting." Clara frowned at her mystery patient, who was now sitting up in bed despite his injury, pale but alert. "I've rested enough." His voice was stronger than before, though. Fever brightened his eyes. "The antibiotics are working." She checked his temperature anyway. 101.2 degrees. "Barely. You need fluids and monitoring." "What I need is whatever's keeping you up at night." Clara withdrew her hand sharply. "Excuse me? You've been gone 3 hours. It's 4 a.m. You've changed clothes and there's chalk dust on your sleeve that wasn't there before." His gaze was analytical, missing nothing. "You're hiding something." "You're delirious," she deflected, but her hand unconsciously touched the bracelet in her pocket. His eyes tracked the movement. "Show me." "Why would I?" "Because whatever it is, it frightens you, and because I can help." Clara studied him, this stranger who'd appeared from nowhere, bleeding and secretive. Yet something in his calm certainty compelled her trust. She removed the bracelet, placing it carefully on the bed between them. It belonged to a nurse who disappeared. Inside was this. She held up the tiny memory card. "But I can't access the files. They're encrypted." He held out his hand. "May I?" Against all professional judgment, Clara surrendered the card. The man examined it closely. "Do you have a tablet? Something not connected to the hospital network?" Clara hesitated, then pulled an old iPad from her locker. He inserted the card into an adapter, fingers moving with practiced ease through security protocols that would have stymied most people. "How do you know how to do this?" she asked, watching as encrypted files began to unlock on the screen. "Let's just say it's a useful skill in my line of work." He didn't look up from the tablet. "And what exactly is your line of work?" His mouth curved in a non-committal smile. "Problem solving." Files populated the screen. Shipping manifests, billing, records, pharmaceutical orders. Clara leaned closer, their shoulders touching as they scrolled through the documents. "These are hospital supply records," she murmured. "But the numbers don't match. Double billing." His finger traced a column of figures. "The hospital orders 1,000 units but records 2,000. Someone pockets the difference, millions over time." Clara's breath caught. This is what Nina found, and why she disappeared. His expression darkened. This level of fraud requires powerful protection. "How do you know all this just from looking?" Clara pulled back, suddenly wary. "Who are you, really?" "Someone who recognizes the pattern." He deflected with suspicious ease. "These supply chains, the shell companies, it's textbook money laundering. And you just happen to be an expert?" Their eyes locked in silent challenge. For a moment, she thought he might finally offer the truth. Instead, he returned to the files. "Here." He opened a document labeled Primary Investors. "These are the real beneficiaries." Clara scanned the list, recognizing prominent board members, the hospital director, and Miguel Vasconcelos. She pointed to the name, then looked at his arm where she'd glimpsed the tattoo. "But that's impossible. Miguel Vasconcelos was killed in a yacht explosion last year. It was all over the news." His face remained impassive, but something flashed in his eyes. Confirmation. A drop of blood appeared on his bandage, spreading slowly across the white gauze. "You've torn your stitches," Clara said softly, professional instincts reasserting themselves. She reached for the medical kit she'd left earlier. "Lie back." He complied silently, watching as she peeled away the bandage. The wound had partially reopened, requiring fresh sutures. Clara worked methodically, aware of his eyes on her face, his measured breathing as her fingers brushed his skin. "You're not wearing gloves," he observed as she cleaned the wound. "I didn't want to leave marks on the bracelet." She threaded the suture needle. "Hold still." He didn't flinch as she closed the torn skin, her fingers steady against his fevered body. When she finished, he caught her wrist, his thumb resting against her pulse. "You're not like the others here," he said quietly. Heat crawled up her neck at his touch. "Neither are you." Something shifted between them, the air charged with unspoken recognition. Clara found herself leaning closer, drawn by the magnetic pull of his gaze. His hand moved to her face, fingers tracing her jawline with feather-light precision. Their breath mingled in the silence. For one suspended moment, Clara forgot everything: the hospital, the files, the danger, aware only of his proximity, the impossible connection humming between them. His lips nearly brushed hers when the tablet chimed with an unlocked final file. The spell broken, Clara pulled away, breathless and disoriented. The screen displayed a financial statement bearing the Vasconcelos corporate letterhead, a benefactor list for the hospital's new wing. At the top, a signature she recognized from the donor wall plaque, Miguel Vasconcelos, dated 3 weeks ago. Clara's eyes snapped to his face, seeing it clearly now despite the bruises and stubble. The same aristocratic features from the society pages. The same penetrating gaze from Charity. Gala photographs. "You're supposed to be dead," she whispered. His expression confirmed everything. "And for now," Miguel Vasconcelos said quietly, "I need to stay that way." "You lied to me." Clara's voice was dangerously quiet as she backed away from Miguel, the tablet still displaying his signature. "This whole time, I never lied," Miguel said, sitting up despite the fresh stitches. "I just didn't tell you everything." "Same difference." She grabbed the tablet, clutching it like a shield. "Do you know what I've risked for you? My job, my license. I know exactly what you've risked." His eyes never left hers. "That's why I tried to keep you out of it." Clara laughed bitterly. "Yet here we are, Miguel Vasconcelos, heir to Brazil's largest pharmaceutical empire, supposedly drowned at sea, hiding in my hospital with a knife wound." "Staged," he admitted. "The drowning, not the knife. Who's trying to kill you?" She gestured to his injury. "My uncle Ricardo." Miguel's expression hardened. "He orchestrated the yacht explosion to eliminate me after I discovered what he was doing." "And what exactly is he doing?" Miguel rose slowly, closing the distance between them. "Using Vasconcelos hospitals as fronts for money laundering. The scheme your nurse friend discovered? It's happening in 12 facilities across 3 countries. Clara's mind raced, connecting pieces. The fraud Nina uncovered is just the surface. He took the tablet, pulling up more files. Ricardo diverts pharmaceutical supplies, opioids, ketamine, experimental compounds, through shell companies. The missing inventory gets sold on black markets, while insurance companies and governments pay for shipments that never arrive. And you've been investigating this? Alone? For 18 months. Miguel's voice was tight. I needed proof before going public. Ricardo controls the board, has politicians in his pocket. So you faked your death? Clara still couldn't reconcile. The wounded man she'd treated with the billionaire on the screen. It was the only way to move freely. As long as Ricardo believed I was dead, I could track the supply chains, document the transfers. A shadow crossed his face. Until 3 nights ago, when his security chief spotted me accessing the main server at the corporate office. Clara sank into the chair beside the bed, the magnitude of the situation crashing over her. And now, you've involved me. I never meant to. His voice softened, genuine regret crossing his features. Finding you, it wasn't part of the plan. Something in his tone made her look up. The intensity in his eyes stole her breath. You let me risk everything for a lie, she whispered. Miguel moved closer, his hand finding hers. No, I risked everything for one real thing. You. The words hung between them, raw and unexpected. Clara should have pulled away, should have called security. Instead, she found herself rising to meet him, drawn by something more powerful than reason. This is insane, she murmured, even as her hand reached for his face. Probably. His smile was brief, pained. But it's the only thing that makes sense right now. Their lips met in a collision of relief and desperation. Clara's fingers tangled in his hair as Miguel pulled her against him, the heat of his body searing through the thin fabric of her scrubs. His mouth was insistent, demanding, breaking through every barrier she'd built since Afghanistan. Miguel backed her against the wall, his hands framing her face with impossible tenderness despite the hunger in his kiss. Clara responded with equal fervor, 18 months of emotional isolation dissolving in the sanctuary of his touch. When they finally broke apart, breathless, Miguel rested his forehead against hers. Their bodies pressed together, hearts racing, in chaotic synchrony. You're still injured, Clara whispered, feeling the dampness of blood seeping through his bandage. Worth it, he murmured against her lips. She shook her head, smiling despite herself. With trembling fingers, She began unbuttoning his shirt to check his wound. The intimacy of the gesture was not lost on either of them. As the fabric parted, revealing the sculpted contours of his chest, Clara's clinical detachment faltered. Miguel's hand covered hers, stilling her movement. Their eyes locked, silent communication passing between them. This wasn't about physical desire, it was deeper, more essential. In this sterile room, surrounded by danger and deception, they'd found something genuine. Instead of continuing, Clara stepped into his embrace. Miguel's arms encircled her, strong and secure, his chin resting atop her head. They stood like that, holding each other in silence, two people clinging to a moment of connection in a world rapidly unraveling around them. "What happens now?" Clara finally asked, her voice muffled against his chest. "I need to complete what I started." His arms tightened around her. "The final evidence is in Ricardo's private server, records of every transaction, every bribe. How do you access it?" "Through the hospital network, all Vasconcello's facilities. Connect to the same secure backbone." Clara pulled back enough to see his face. "You're talking about hacking into your own company from here? Tonight?" "It's our best chance. Ricardo doesn't know where I am yet, but his men will be checking hospitals. Even if you get the evidence, then what? You're still legally dead." Miguel's expression was resolute. "I turn myself in to federal authorities, provide testimony, enough to bring down Ricardo and everyone involved." Including the hospital administration, Clara realized, ice forming in her stomach. "Director Braga is receiving payments through offshore accounts," Miguel confirmed. "The evidence is in those files." Clara turned away, processing the implications. This hospital is barely functioning as it is. If the administration falls, what happens to the patients? To my kids? Miguel's brow furrowed. "Kids?" Before Clara could explain, her phone chimed with an urgent text from her nursing assistant. SOS shelter. Someone asking questions about extra patients. "Come now." "Gabriel," Clara breathed, fear clutching her throat. Miguel read the message over her shoulder. "Who's Gabriel?" "One of the children. She grabbed her bag. "I have to go." "Clara, wait." Miguel seized his shirt, hastily buttoning it. "You can't go alone. If Ricardo's men are searching for me, then they're searching for anyone connected to me," she finished, her face paling. "The shelter. That's how they found Nina. She was helping me with medical supplies. If they've traced her bracelet somehow, they'll have found your hiding place." Miguel was already moving toward the door, grimly determined despite his injury. "We need to get those children out. Miguel, your wound will have to wait." He checked the corridor and pulled her after him. "Show me where they are." They hurried. Through the quiet halls, dawn still hours away. Clara led them through the service entrance, down a narrow passage connecting to the abandoned wing. As they approached the hidden access door, Miguel suddenly pulled her into the shadows. Voices echoed from the corridor ahead, men speaking in rapid Portuguese. "Ricardo's security team," Miguel whispered in her ear. "They are already here." Clara's blood turned to ice. "Gabriel." "The children?" Miguel gripped her shoulders, his gaze intense. "Listen to me. I'll create a distraction. You get the children out through the loading dock." "No," she protested. "You can barely stand." "Clara." His voice was commanding, brooking. No argument. "Those men won't hesitate to eliminate witnesses, even children, especially children who've seen their faces." Tears burned behind her eyes as the brutal reality of their situation crystallized. "Come with us." "I can't." His expression softened momentarily. "What I have to do next, I need to do alone." Before she could respond, Miguel pulled her close, capturing her lips in a kiss that felt like both a promise and a goodbye. When they separated, his eyes held a fierce determination. "Find Gabriel," he whispered. "I'll find you when it's over." As Miguel disappeared into the darkness toward the voices, Clara forced herself to turn away, her heart breaking with every step as she raced toward the shelter and the children who needed her, praying she wasn't already too late. Clara moved silently through the abandoned pediatric wing, her footsteps echoing against cracked tiles. The children's makeshift beds were empty, blankets thrown aside in haste. No whispers, no movement, just the oppressive silence of a sanctuary violated. "Gabriel?" she called softly, panic rising in her throat. "Anyone?" A soft shuffling sound drew her toward the old nurse's station. Behind the dusty counter, she found Louisa, one of the older girls, clutching a terrified toddler. "Miss Clara," Louisa whispered. "Men came. They took Gabriel first. Then the others." Clara's blood froze. "Where?" "The imaging room. They had needles." Tears streaked Louisa's face. "We hid in the supply cabinet." Clara handed Louisa her phone. "Call this number. Tell them Clara needs immediate evacuation from St. Mercy's abandoned wing. Then take the service exit. Someone will meet you. What about you?" "I'm getting the others." Clara squeezed the girl's shoulder. "Go, now." After ensuring Louisa escaped, Clara crept toward the old imaging suite. The once state-of-the-art MRI facility had been stripped for parts, leaving a cavernous room of shadows. As she approached, hushed voices drifted through the partially open door. 4 more sedated. "The van arrives in 20 minutes. And the files? Did you find them?" Clara recognized the second voice with a jolt of horror. Director Braga, head of St. Mercy's Hospital, a woman she'd worked under for 3 years. "Nothing yet, but the boy who had the bracelet is starting to wake up. We'll question him again." Clara peered through the crack in the door. Gabriel lay on a stretcher, eyelids fluttering as he fought the sedative. 5 other children were arranged on gurneys, small forms terrifyingly still. Armed men in plain clothes stood guard while Braga examined a tablet, the one Miguel had used to decrypt Nina's files. "Ricardo wants them transported to the facility in Campinas," Braga was saying. "No documentation, no trace." "And the nurse? Clara Almeida?" Braga's face hardened. "Find her. She knows too much already." Clara pulled back, mind racing. She needed a distraction, something to clear the room so she could reach the children. The old imaging wing had been disconnected from the main power grid, running on a separate generator for security. If she could cut that power. A hand closed over her mouth from behind. Clara fought instinctively, jamming her elbow backward. Her attacker grunted but didn't release her. "It's me," Miguel's voice whispered in her ear. Relief flooded through her as he carefully removed his hand. "The children," she began. "I know." I counted 4 guards, plus Braga. His face was ghostly, pale, fresh blood staining his side, but his eyes burned with focus. "There's a maintenance panel 3 doors down. I can trigger a blackout. I need 5 minutes to get them out." Miguel nodded. "Head for the north stairwell after. I left an access card on the 3rd step. It'll get you through the security doors." "What? About you?" Something flickered across his face. Resignation, perhaps. "I'm going to confront Braga. Record her confession." "That's suicide. It's necessary." His hand brushed her cheek. "Go. Be ready when the lights fail." Before she could protest, Miguel disappeared down the corridor. Seconds later, the emergency lights flickered and died, plunging the wing into darkness. Shouting erupted from the imaging room. "Check the generator," Braga's voice commanded. "You two, secure the subjects." Clara counted footsteps. 2 sets. Leaving. 2 remaining. She slipped into the room, navigating by memory toward the stretchers. Her fingers found Gabriel's arm, then his face. His eyelids fluttered at her touch. "It's me," she whispered. "Stay quiet." Working by feel, she disconnected the IV in his arm, then moved to the next child. A beam of light swept the room as one guard used his phone as a flashlight. Clara froze behind a stretcher. See anything? The second guard called. Nothing. Probably. Just a circuit. The rest of his sentence died as something heavy crashed into him. The light spun wildly, illuminating glimpses of Miguel grappling with the guard. The second man rushed to help his colleague, leaving the children momentarily unattended. Clara seized her chance, moving rapidly from stretcher to stretcher, disconnecting IVs and rousing the children who could walk. Gabriel clung to her neck as she lifted him. "This way," she whispered to the others, guiding them toward the back exit. Behind them, a gunshot cracked through the darkness. Clara pushed forward, herding the frightened children through the door. They'd almost reached the stairwell when the lights blazed back to life. "Stop right there, Nurse Almeida." Director Braga stood at the end of the corridor, a sleek pistol aimed at Clara's chest. Blood spattered the woman's designer blouse. "Miguel's blood?" "Step away from the children," Braga ordered. Clara pushed Gabriel behind her. "They're just kids, Elizabeth. Innocent children. They're merchandise now." Braga's smile was chilling. "Worth more than you make in a year, each one." Understanding dawned with sickening clarity. You're not just laundering money, you're trafficking children. A profitable subsidiary operation. Braga stepped closer. Ricardo Vasconcelos is a visionary. He understood these street rats could serve a higher purpose: medical research, organ matching, adoption to wealthy clients with specific tastes. Clara fought the urge to vomit. "You won't get away with this. I already have, for years." Braga gestured with the gun. "Now move aside or I'll shoot you in front of them." "I don't think you will." Miguel emerged from the shadows behind Braga. Blood, streaming from a cut above his eye. In his hand he held a phone, its recording light blinking red. "Miguel Vasconcelos." Braga's composure wavered slightly. "Your uncle said you might be trouble, even from the grave." "I'm very much alive." Miguel's voice was dangerously soft. "And you just confessed to child trafficking on video." Braga's eyes darted between Miguel and Clara. "Ricardo's men are already in the building, and federal agents are surrounding it as we speak." Miguel took a step forward. "It's over, Elizabeth." For a tense moment, Braga seemed to calculate her odds. Then her finger tightened on the trigger. Everything happened at once. Miguel lunged forward. Clara threw herself over Gabriel. The gun discharged with a deafening crack. When Clara looked up, Miguel had Braga pinned against the wall, the gun skittering across the floor. Blood soaked his shirt, whether from his reopened wound or a new one, Clara couldn't tell. "Get them out," he gasped. "Now!" Clara didn't hesitate. Gathering the children, she rushed toward the stairwell, finding the access card exactly where Miguel had promised. As the security door closed behind them, she caught one last glimpse of Miguel restraining a struggling Braga. The north stairs led to a service corridor near the emergency exit. Clara could hear sirens in the distance, whether police or ambulance. She prayed they'd arrive in time. Gabriel tugged urgently at her sleeve, pointing back the way they'd come. His eyes were wide with fear. "I know, sweetie." Clara squeezed his hand. "Miguel will be okay." But the boy shook his head, frantically miming men with guns. Clara understood too late. As they rounded the corner toward freedom, 3 men in tactical gear blocked their path. Behind them, heavy footsteps signaled more approaching from the stairwell. They were trapped. One of the men stepped forward, his accent thick. "Ricardo Vasconcelos would like to speak with you." Clara pushed the children behind her. "Let them go. This isn't about them." "On the contrary." The man smiled coldly. "My employer is very interested in his inventory." A storage closet door stood ajar to Clara's right. With no other options, she yanked it open and shoved the children inside, putting herself between them and the advancing men. "Run!" she shouted to the oldest child. "The service tunnel." The last thing she saw was Gabriel's terrified face as the door closed. Then rough hands seized her arms, dragging her forward. A sharp pain exploded in her temple, and darkness descended. Clara woke to gentle hands on her face and the familiar scent of antiseptic. She opened her eyes to find Miguel leaning over her, his features tight with concern. They were in a cramped supply room, medical shelves creating narrow walls around them. "The children," she whispered. "Safe." He helped her sit up. "Your contact got them out through the tunnel." Relief washed over her. "Braga? In custody, along with 2 of Ricardo's men." His jaw tightened. "But Ricardo knows I'm alive now. His people are searching the hospital room by room." Clara touched his side where fresh blood bloomed. "You're hit, grazed." Miguel dismissed the wound. "Can you walk?" She nodded, allowing him to pull her to her feet. The world tilted briefly before stabilizing. Miguel steadied her, his arms encircling her waist, bringing them chest to chest in the narrow space. Despite the danger, despite the pain pulsing through her skull, Clara felt an overwhelming surge of emotion. Miguel was alive. The children were safe. For this moment, nothing else mattered. Miguel seemed to read her thoughts, his forehead pressed against hers, breath warm on her lips. "I thought I'd lost you," he murmured. "I'm still here," she whispered back. Their lips met in a kiss born of fear and relief, of narrowly averted tragedy. Miguel's arms tightened around her, his body solid and reassuring against hers. Clara wound her fingers into his hair, anchoring herself to him as the kiss deepened, became something urgent and necessary. The distant sound of boots in the corridor forced them apart, though Miguel kept her pressed close, their heartbeats thundering in tandem. "We need to move," he breathed against her ear. "I have to upload the evidence before Ricardo destroys it all." Clara nodded, reluctantly disentangling herself. "What's the plan?" Miguel's eyes held a mixture of determination and regret. "I'm going. To turn myself in, bring the whole organization down from the inside." Clara's heart contracted painfully. "When?" "Tonight." His hands framed her face, thumbs tracing her cheekbones. There's no other way to end this. She knew he was right, but the thought of losing him so soon after finding him tore at something vital inside her. "Don't wait for me," he whispered, as if reading her thoughts again. Clara pulled him closer, memorizing the feel of him. "Then come back before I stop." Their final kiss ached with unspoken promises and possibilities, a desperate, hungry claiming that burned through Clara's veins. When they broke apart, she felt permanently altered, as if some essential part of her would now always belong to this man who had crashed into her life less than 24 hours ago. "Stay here until the all clear," Miguel instructed, reluctantly, releasing her. "My contact in the federal police will find you." Clara caught his wrist as he turned to leave. "How will I know it's safe?" Miguel removed his watch, an understated but unmistakably expensive timepiece, and pressed it into her palm. "He'll have the matching one." Then he was gone, slipping into the corridor where Ricardo's men hunted for the nephew who had returned from the dead to destroy them. Clara clutched the watch against her chest, still warm from Miguel's wrist, and prepared to wait in darkness for a dawn she couldn't yet imagine. Dawn broke over St. Mercy's Hospital, painting the chaos in harsh light. Police barricades surrounded the building while news vans jostled for position. Inside, Clara watched from a secluded corridor as federal agents led Director Braga away in handcuffs. "You need medical attention," said the federal agent who'd introduced himself as Tomas. He wore Miguel's matching watch, just as promised. Clara shook her head. "The children first. They're safe, being examined at Central Hospital." Tomas steered her toward an empty exam room. "Miguel was explicit about ensuring your safety." "Where is he now?" Clara asked, allowing a paramedic to clean the gash on her. "Temple." Thomas's expression remained neutral. "En route to federal headquarters. His testimony is crucial to dismantling Ricardo Vasconcellos' operation." "And Ricardo?" "Still at large, but his accounts are frozen, his allies scrambling." Tomas checked his phone. The evidence Miguel gathered is substantial. Dozens of arrests already across 3 countries. Clara should have felt vindicated. Instead, worry gnawed at her. Ricardo will target Miguel. We have him in protective custody. That won't be enough. Clara pushed the paramedic's hands away. Ricardo has people everywhere. You don't understand. I understand that Miguel risked everything to expose this conspiracy, Thomas interrupted. Including his life. And yours. The accusation in his tone was subtle, but clear. Clara fell silent, the weight of the past 24 hours crashing down. She'd gone from night shift nurse to accomplice in one of Brazil's biggest corporate fraud investigations. Miguel had upended her carefully controlled existence, and now he was gone. What happens to the hospital? She finally asked. Temporary administration until the investigation concludes. Tomas softened slightly. The children's wing will remain operational. Miguel made that a condition of his cooperation. Of course, he had. Even facing his uncle's wrath, Miguel had remembered her shelter kids. I need to go to him, Clara decided, standing up. Impossible. The debriefing location is classified. Tomas blocked her path. Miguel left instructions for you to remain here under protection. Then find him a different protection detail. Clara met his gaze unflinchingly. Ricardo's men infiltrated this hospital without anyone noticing. Do you really believe your federal safe house is secure? Doubt flickered across Tomas's face. Miguel knew the risks. And I know Ricardo's reach. Nina Santos disappeared despite witness protection. Clara clutched Miguel's watch, drawing strength from its solid weight. I can help. How? Tomas scoffed. You're a nurse, not an agent. Exactly. No one would suspect me. Clara leaned closer. Ricardo's looking for federal agents around Miguel, not hospital staff. It's too dangerous. More dangerous than letting Ricardo's people find him first? Clara challenged. Miguel trusted me with his life before. He'd do it again. Their standoff was interrupted by Tomas's phone. His expression darkened as he listened. When? He glanced at Clara. Lock down the perimeter. No one in or out. What happened? Clara demanded as he ended the call. Miguel's transport was compromised. 2 agents down. Tomas holstered his weapon. They're moving him to secondary extraction. Fear clutched Clara's heart. Ricardo found him. We have protocols. Your protocols have already failed. Clara's patience snapped. Let me help, or Miguel dies. Something in her desperation reached Tomas. He studied her for a long moment before making a decision. There's a contingency evacuation plan, medical transport to the airport, then a private flight to Brasilia. He checked his watch. 30 minutes. I'll be ready in 5. The hospital's emergency evacuation protocol provided perfect cover for their exit. As fire alarms blared, patients and staff streamed from the building. Clara, now dressed in paramedic's attire, pushed a gurney toward the ambulance bay where Tomas waited. Third vehicle, he directed, scanning the crowd for threats. They loaded the empty gurney into an unmarked ambulance. As Tomas slid behind the wheel, Clara climbed into the back, securing herself for the journey. The rendezvous point is an airfield. 20 kilometers south, Tomas explained as they pulled away from the chaos. Miguel will arrive by separate transport. If he makes it, Clara murmured, anxiety crawling through her veins. Tomas's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. He's survived worse. The ambulance wound through back streets, avoiding main roads where Ricardo's men might be watching. Clara's mind raced with everything that had transpired since Miguel appeared in room 305. How quickly she'd gone from cautious professional to someone willing to risk everything for a man she barely knew. Yet it didn't feel like recklessness. Something about Miguel, his determination, his principles, the way he looked at her as if truly seeing her, had awakened parts of herself long dormant since Afghanistan. The ambulance slowed as they approached a chain-link fence surrounding a small airstrip. A sleek private jet waited on the tarmac, Its engine's already running. Wait here, Thomas instructed, exiting the vehicle. Clara watched him approach a group of agents near the plane. Among them, she spotted a figure that made her heart stutter. Miguel, battered but upright, conferring intensely with a senior official. She nearly called out when movement in her peripheral vision stopped her. A dark sedan had pulled up 50 meters away, the tinted window lowered slightly, revealing the barrel of a rifle. "Miguel!" Clara screamed, scrambling from the ambulance. Shots cracked across the airfield. Agents dove for cover. Miguel turned. At her voice, their eyes locking for one infinite second before Tomas tackled him to the ground. More vehicles converged on the airstrip. Ricardo's men, Clara realized with horror. The trap had been perfectly laid, not at the hospital, but here, where Miguel would be exposed during transfer. "Get to the plane," Thomas shouted, returning fire as he pulled Miguel toward the jet. Clara ran toward them, ducking as bullets pinged against metal nearby. She reached Miguel's side as Tomas provided covering fire. "You shouldn't be here," Miguel gasped, blood seeping. Through his dress shirt, a new wound. "Neither should you." Clara helped him toward the aircraft stairs. "We need to get you out of Brazil." Not without the evidence. Miguel gestured to a secure briefcase handcuffed to his wrist. "Everything I have on Ricardo is here. If they get it..." "They're not getting anything," Clara promised, supporting his weight as they stumbled up the stairs. Inside the jet, chaos reigned as agents secured the cabin. The pilot shouted about immediate departure as gunfire continued outside. "We need to leave now," Tomas ordered, appearing at the doorway. "There are still agents on the ground," an officer protested. "And they'll all die if we don't get this evidence to Brasilia," Tomas countered. "Close the door." Miguel clutched Clara's hand as the stairs began to retract. "Wait," he said suddenly. "Where's the prosecutor? Vieira." Tomas's expression changed. Subtly. "Already on board?" "No, he's not." Miguel's grip tightened on Clara. He was supposed to take custody of the evidence personally. Clara felt Miguel tense beside her, saw the subtle shift in his posture. Something was wrong. "Plans changed," Tomas said smoothly, reaching for the briefcase. "I'll secure that for you." In one fluid motion, Miguel pulled Clara behind him. "You're working for Ricardo." Tomas's friendly facade dissolved. Smart boy, but not smart enough. He drew his weapon. "The briefcase. Now." "Miguel," Clara whispered, fear paralyzing. It's okay," Miguel murmured back. "Trust me." To Tomas, he said, "You'll never make it off this airfield. Federal agents have this place surrounded." "Those aren't federal agents outside," Tomas smirked. "They're Ricardo's men playing their part. Now the briefcase, or I shoot the nurse." Miguel slowly raised the handcuffed briefcase. "You need the key, which is in your pocket. Don't play games." As Miguel reached into his jacket with his free hand, his eyes met Clara's. A silent message passed between them. One chance. The pilot. Clara suddenly shouted, pointing toward the cockpit. As Tomas instinctively glanced away, Miguel swung the briefcase in a wide arc, connecting with the man's temple. Tomas staggered, his gun discharging into the ceiling. Clara lunged for the emergency exit lever. "Everyone out!" She yelled to the actual agents aboard. The exit door blew open, the escape slide deploying automatically. Gunfire erupted as Ricardo's fake agents realized their operation was compromised. "Go," Miguel urged, pressing something into Clara's hand. A small flash drive. "Everything's backed up here. Get it to Federal Prosecutor Vieira, the real one." "I'm not leaving you," she protested. "Don't wait for me," he insisted, eyes burning with urgency. "Then come back before I stop," she whispered, echoing their earlier promise. They kissed one last time, a kiss that ached with everything unsaid between them. A kiss that carried the weight of possibility and the shadow of loss. Then Miguel pulled away, shoving Clara toward the escape slide. Go! As federal reinforcements stormed the airfield, Clara slid into the chaos below, the flash. Drive clutched tightly in her fist. Through the smoke and confusion, she watched as Miguel handcuffed Tomas to a seat, then moved toward the cockpit. The jet's engines roared to life. Clara stood frozen as the aircraft taxied rapidly down the runway, picking up speed. It lifted off, just as Ricardo's men converged on its original position. In her palm, Miguel's watch still ticked steadily, marking the seconds since he'd entered her life. Since he'd changed everything. And now, as she watched the jet disappear into the clouds, Clara wondered if she'd ever see him again. 3 months later, Clara watched sunlight stream through the windows of St. Mercy's newly renovated pediatric wing. Fresh paint brightened walls once stained by neglect. Modern equipment replaced outdated machines. Children's laughter, once hushed and hidden, now filled corridors officially designated for their care. "What do you think, Gabriel?" Clara asked, adjusting the boy's collar. "Pretty amazing, isn't it?" Gabriel nodded enthusiastically, his eyes wide with wonder. The mute child who'd once hidden in abandoned rooms now had a proper bed, regular medical care, and enrollment in a specialized education program. Clara smiled at his excitement, though her own happiness remained incomplete. Since that day at the airfield, she'd heard nothing from Miguel. The flash drive had reached Federal Prosecutor Vieira, triggering the largest corporate fraud investigation in Brazil's history. Ricardo Vasconcelos now awaited trial, his empire dismantled, his accounts frozen. But of Miguel himself? Nothing. The jet had landed in Colombia, but he wasn't aboard when authorities arrived. Only Tomas, still handcuffed to his seat, raging about betrayal. Some nights, Clara still woke clutching Miguel's watch, certain she'd heard his voice. "Nurse Almeida?" Dr. Tavares appeared at her side. "The reporter from Globo News is here for the interview." Clara straightened her uniform. As the newly appointed Director of Pediatric Social Services, she was now the public face of St. Mercy's transformation. "Ready, Gabriel?" She took the boy's hand. He'd insisted on being present for the dedication ceremony. The hospital's main atrium buzzed with activity. Officials mingled with medical staff, while photographers documented the renovation. Above them hung a banner proudly displaying the wing's new name, Wings. The reporter, a sharp-eyed woman with efficient movements, scanned her notes as Clara approached. "Nurse Almeida, your whistleblowing exposed not only financial fraud but a child trafficking operation. Were you afraid?" Clara considered the question, thinking of Nina Santos, who disappeared for doing exactly what Clara had finished. "Yes, but fear can't guide our choices when children's lives are at stake." "And the anonymous donor who funded the renovation? There's speculation it's connected to the Vasconcelos case." "The donation came through proper legal channels," Clara replied carefully. "Beyond that, I can't comment," the reporter persisted. "The amount, nearly 30 million reais, matches funds previously misappropriated from the hospital by Ricardo Vasconcelos. Yet his assets are frozen. That's quite a coincidence." "Perhaps justice has many forms," Clara offered, her hand unconsciously touching Miguel's watch, now worn on a chain beneath her uniform. After the interview, Clara escorted Gabriel to the newly equipped therapy room where other children gathered for the day's activities. The boy had become her shadow since their escape, his silent presence a comfort during Miguel's absence. "I'll pick you up after my shift," she promised, ruffling his hair. Gabriel caught her hand before she could leave. He reached into his pocket, withdrawing a carefully folded note. "What's this?" Clara asked, taking the paper. Gabriel pointed to the window, then made a flying motion with his hands. "Someone gave this to you? Outside?" Clara unfolded the note with trembling fingers. Inside, a single line of elegant handwriting. "You were the only place I ever felt seen." Her heart stuttered. The same words from her recurring dreams, the ones where Miguel returned. She'd never shared those dreams with anyone. Gabriel, who gave you this? Her voice cracked, with barely contained emotion. The boy smiled, a rare, bright smile, and pointed, again, this time toward the door. Clara turned slowly, afraid to hope yet unable to stop herself. The therapy room had emptied for lunch. Only Gabriel remained, watching her with knowing eyes. She scanned the empty space, disappointment settling like lead in her stomach. "Let's go get some lunch," she said, forcing brightness into her voice. Gabriel shook his head stubbornly, grabbing her hand and pulling her toward the courtyard door. She allowed him to lead her outside, where a new healing garden bloomed where once there had been only concrete. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" she acknowledged, misunderstanding his intention. "The children can play outside now." Gabriel stamped, his foot in frustration, pointing more insistently toward a secluded corner of the garden, partially hidden by flowering vines. Clara followed his gesture, squinting against the sunlight. A figure stood in the shadows, tall and still, her breath caught. "Go ahead," she whispered to Gabriel, suddenly uncertain. "I'll be right there." The boy grinned, shaking his head. Instead of running to the mystery visitor as she expected, he backed toward the door. Before slipping inside, he paused, looking from Clara to the shadowed figure and back again. Then, shocking her to her core, Gabriel spoke, his first words in the 3 years she'd known him. "He'll come back," the boy said in a voice rough from disuse. "You make him brave." With that pronouncement, he disappeared inside, leaving Clara frozen in disbelief. The figure in the garden stepped forward, emerging from shadow into light. Miguel. Thinner than before, with new lines etched around his eyes, but unmistakably himself. He wore simple clothes, jeans, a button-down shirt. Nothing like the billionaire heir he'd once been. But his eyes, when they met hers, were unchanged. Intense, direct, seeing straight through to her soul. Clara couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Part of her feared he would vanish if she approached, another dream dissolving in the morning light. "You're here," she finally managed, her voice barely audible. "Always planned to be." Miguel crossed the distance between them with measured steps. It just took longer than expected. 3 months. The words held no accusation, only wonder. "I thought that I was dead." His smile was gentle. "I've gotten quite good at that particular deception." Ricardo? Imprisoned, his operation dismantled. Miguel stopped before her, close enough to touch, yet maintaining a careful distance. "Your testimony was crucial. The prosecutor said you were extraordinary. I had help, a flash drive with irrefutable evidence. A desperate gambit." His eyes softened. "I didn't know if you'd escaped the airfield." "What happened after you took off?" Clara asked, needing to fill the gaps in the story they'd begun together. "Colombia. Was a diversion. I parachuted shortly after takeoff. Spent weeks gathering the remaining evidence against Ricardo's international partners. Had to stay dead a little longer. And now? Now Miguel Vasconcelos officially lives again. Though considerably less wealthy," he gestured to his simple clothes. "The company is in receivership, most assets frozen during the investigation. Yet our pediatric wing received a rather substantial donation," Clara observed, studying his face. Miguel's mouth quirked. "I managed to set aside certain funds for worthy causes." "Wings," Clara said softly. "That was you." It seemed appropriate, a place for new beginnings. He hesitated, uncharacteristically uncertain. "I wasn't sure you'd want to see me." "I've been waiting." Clara touched the watch chain at her neck. "Every day." Something shifted in his expression, hope kindling behind the careful reserve. "I can't offer what I once could. The Vasconcelos name is disgraced." the fortune mostly gone. I never wanted either of those things. What did you want? He asked quietly. Clara took a step closer, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from him, to breathe in the scent that had haunted her dreams for months. Just you, she whispered. The only real thing. Miguel's composure broke. Without another word, he closed the distance between them, gathering her into his arms. Clara went willingly, her hands finding his face, assuring herself he was real, solid, warm, alive. I had to come back, he murmured against her hair. Before you stopped waiting. They stood like that, entwined, reunited, in the garden built from the ashes of corruption. When they finally separated, just enough to see each other's faces, Miguel's eyes held a question. Still want to risk everything? He asked, echoing words from what felt like a lifetime ago. Clara's answer was to rise on her toes, bringing her lips to his in a kiss, unlike their previous ones. Not desperate, not goodbye, but slow and deep and certain, a beginning rather than an end. Only if it's with you, she whispered against his mouth. In the hospital beyond the garden, children laughed and played in spaces now filled with light. Gabriel watched from a window, a smile on his lips that had once been sealed by trauma. And in the quiet corner of the healing garden, Clara and Miguel held each other, two people who'd found themselves by saving each other. The watch that had counted their separation now marked the beginning of their future, ticking steadily against Clara's heart as Miguel kissed her again, with all the promise of time finally on their side.